Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ivo Popivanov. I'm assistant professor at New Bulgarian University, and it's my real pleasure to have Associate Professor Manousos Klados from City College, European Campus of University of York, who agreed to give a second time a webinar for us. And I'll just say a couple of words to present him, even though some of you might already know him. Professor Klados actually is a mathematician, but he has a PhD in neurosciences, and it's a combination of affective cognitive and computational neurosciences. And he has a very vast knowledge of electrophysiological methods, data analysis, data acquisition, also including neurofeedback. This was the topic of his last talk that he gave in summer. He's coordinating several big research projects, international projects with a lot of partners, with big funding and so on. And of course, he has many publications. They are cited a lot of times, over 2,000 times. I just checked today. So it's really a great pleasure to have him speaking about neurobiology of personality, or these new insights. So Manousos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you very much for this nice presentation. You made me a bit, shy. Honestly, I didn't know that I reached 2,000 citation, but okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
As you said, I'm a mathematician. So today, what we are going to see is mostly a modeling, let's say, work that I have done the last years, starting from when I was at postdoc at Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, and continue right until now. So we are going to see about personality, and when we say about the neurobiological basis, we mean if personality is encoded, let's say, inside the brain or not. Before we start our presentation, the first and the most, let's say, important thing is to define it. What is personality? Everyone says about personality and so on, but what is actually personality? Actual personality is a psychological construct because it's not something that you can touch it or you can feel it. And it has to do with a unique individual's unique and consistent patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. This is the, let's say, the core definition of personality. In a more liberal way, we can say that personality is an attempt to describe and explain how people are similar, how they are different, and where is this uniqueness between two individuals, while they're trying to explain the person as a whole. We can understand very easily how different, let's say, how different personality types can be, let's say, projected to the same thing. Let's say that, as we say, we have here the dwarfs, where it's almost the same dwarfs, but their personalities are completely different. Before going into the neuroscience part, let's say some works about the perspectives of personality. First of all, we have the psychoanalytic perspective, which emphasizes the importance of, let's say, the unconscious process and the influence of early childhood experiences. Then we have the humanistic perspective, where it represents an optimistic, let's say, look at human nature, which emphasizes the self and the fulfillment of a person's uniqueness, unique potential. Then we have another one perspective that is around the social and cognitive domain, which emphasizes in learning and cognitive processes that, including the importance of the beliefs of someone has about itself, the goals, settings, the motivation, and the self-regulation. And the last one is the, let's say, the most bold perspective, which is the trait perspective, which gives more emphasis to the description and the measurement of specific personality differences among individuals. In this presentation, we will focus more on the trait perspective because let me tell you that trait perspective is the only perspective that is very well documented and formulated in a solid basis. And we have very nice tools in order to quantify this, let's say, psychological construct, something that's very, very crucial when you're doing research. From the definition, we can understand that the trait perspective is completely different from the psychoanalytic, humanistic, and social cognitive theories, which mostly emphasize the similarities among people, while the trait approach focuses more on the describing the individual differences. Also, the trait theories view the person as a unique combination of personality characteristic or attributes called traits or dimensions, and so on. It's a relative stable enduring predisposition to have in a certain way, so it's not changed by the manner of the time, while the trait theory is a theory of personality that focuses focus mostly on identifying, describing, and measuring individual differences. So if we dive more into the trait perspective, we can see that we have the surface traits or the traits, which these traits can be easily observable from the behavior and monitor and so on. Then we have the source traits, which is, let's say, the most basic dimensions of the personality. And actually, the most well-known system has 5 dimensions. It's also very well understood that the source trait can give rise to a vast numbers of surface traits. And there are relatively few source traits, around 5, 6, according to the model you are using. And this few represents, let's say, a universal way of describing the individual differences. The most, let's say, well-known trait system about personality, let's say, a personality system that is based on trait, let's say, theory, is the Big Five, where they go, let's say, one step further than the Eisenach personality dimension, which fails to tell you the whole story. So it is expanded, let's say, way in order to make this, to make a better modeling of someone's personality. Also, it has great consensus among many trait researchers that Big Five has the essential building blocks, and all this can be described in the 5 basic dimensions, which that's why it's called the Big Five. Here we can see we will focus a bit on that, of the hierarchical model of the Big Five, where in the blue, let's say, the blue boxes, have the main domains, the 5 main domains, which is neuroticism, agreeableness, conscientiousness, extraversion, and openness. Then, if you can see on the left side, we see 2 purple meta traits. It's actually one level higher than the domains. And we have the stability meta trait, which is, let's say, the minus neuroticism. It's negatively correlated with neuroticism and positively correlated with agreeableness and conscientiousness. While we have also plasticity, which is positively correlated with extraversion and openness. Today we will be focused mainly on stability, and we will see how stability meta trait is linked with the brain connectivity, and with let's say, the serotonergic system. Now, each domain has 2 aspects according to which part of the spectrum you are in, the low neuroticism or high neuroticism. For example, neuroticism has volatility and withdrawal, and every aspect of this has and is, let's say, depicted with different facets in everyday behavior. Speaking about the spectrum, we can see here that in every dimension, the 2 edges of the spectrum, for example, neuroticism is from stable to unstable, extraversion is from outgoing to withdrawn, etc. And in order, when we evaluate this trait perspective of personality, the good thing is that, and the difficult part is to make many psychologists to generally agree that all the people can be described and compared in terms of these 5 basic personality traits. However, we understand that there are limitations also on this trait approach, like the other approaches have. And the trait theories fail, or they are not completely capable to truly explain a human personality, and we cannot, let's say, be very strict with that, because when you try to model a psychological construct that first of all, you cannot touch it, and then when you try to model a psychological construct that is so complex, complicated, like human's personality, then of course, as you can understand, you cannot ask so much, or you cannot expect so much to model every detail of human personality and so on. Also, the trait theories fail to explain how or why these individual differences developed. That's why, and I'm pretty happy to make another webinar for that. I'm investigating this the last 2 years about the twins. I make some twin studies with monozygotic and dizygotic twins, and twins that were raised with the same parents or with different parents, in order to see what is the impact of, let's say, a genome into personality development, and what's the impact of the environment. Trait theory also fail to address other important personality issues, like the basic motives that drive human personality and how personality is developed. The role of unconscious mental processes, something again that is very abstract. How beliefs about the self-influence personality, or how psychological change and growth occur. In this presentation, we will try to shed some light into this by shedding light into the neurobiological aspect of personality. And the rationale behind this study was exactly this. We try to link the biological variables to traits. We already know that stability and plasticity are likely to reflect biological system which with very broad impact on both brain function and personality. While stability mostly, and we focus more on stability because we are going to discuss and say about stability, appears to represent a general tendency to regulate or restrain potentially disruptive emotion and behavior, while there is an evidence that's related to serotonin. So we will see afterwards a very strong relation on the brain networks, on the areas especially that belong to the serotonergic system. And now let me show you very briefly the methodology. This study was performed using fMRI's methodology for 468 subjects from Human Connectome project, where we had 4 resting state runs. The surface resolution was 64,000 vertices, which means that we had a very dense, let's say, how to say that, spatial sampling of the cortex, in order to be more, let's say, to put more details and to have more detailed analysis about the personality changes. And actually what we try to do with this was we try to model the how much of the variability that we observe in the brain connectivity, let's say that, in the connections of the cortical networks, can be explained by the variability of the personality that we see from self-report tested. And we use the NEO-FFI, which is self-reported questionnaire with 60 items about personality. It has, let's say, 12 questions for each one of the personality traits. As I said, yes, this is the aim. I already told that to model the common variance between the functional connectivity matrices, which are the brain networks, and the self-reported personality questionnaires. In order to do this, we use some, let's say, tools from the spectral graph theory and the diffusion maps. Here, I don't want to say more because we are going to say to dive deeper into mathematics and so on. The only thing that I would like to say is that the spectral graph theory and especially the diffusion maps belong to something that we call manifold learning and kernel methods, and they can, let's say, actually it's a geometric transformation of the data, as you can see here in the graph, in order to make the classification, let's say, or in order to help us to distinguish the data points more easily. So actually it's a geometrical transformation, and it is also used for dimensionality reduction. This is how we are going to use it right now. Then we are going to see the partial least square correlation, which is used for modeling the cross-block covariance between connectivity and personality matrices. Actually, partial least square correlation is used when you have two data matrices from the same subject, let's say that, and you try to find common patterns between one and another. So actually, you are modeling the cross-block covariance between the two matrices. And let's focus initially on the diffusion maps. As I said, the diffusion maps were, let's say, it's based on a kernel function, which actually is the connectivity matrix. And then we apply the Markov chain. Actually, Markov chain is nothing more, and you can think it about the brain, about the transition probability from one area of the brain to another. Okay, so if one area is activated, what's the probability of this energy to be transmitted to another area, and so on. In this sense, the only thing that you need to let's say notice here is, I don't know if I can, one moment, yes, I hope that you can see my laser. The only thing is that you should note here is that the arrows that comes out from E node are 0.3 and 0.7, so the total summary is 1, exactly 100%. So here, what the Markov chain says is that from node E, we have a transition probability of 70% to go to, let's say, node alpha, and 30% probability of returning back to the node D. And the same, if you see in alpha, we have a transition probability of 40% going from alpha to E, and 60% of probability going from alpha to alpha again. Then I won't focus on that, on eigenvalue decomposition. I have the slides, but I don't want to, let's say, focus on that. The only thing that I would like to say is here, it's actually a methodological, let's say, step. In the kernel function, which actually the connectivity matrix, and you know, in fMRI, the connectivity is mostly computing by pairwise correlations. So since we have pairwise correlations, we will have also negative numbers. However, we threshold them at 0, we keep out the negative values, which is actually a limitation of the current study that I'm going to present the results, because a lot of information are hidden also in the negative correlation when one area is activated and another one area is deactivated. And this is the one property that there is that we don't have directionality. So we say that the naturalistic, let's say, interpretation of symmetry is that one area does not send energy to another area, but two areas are simultaneously activated or deactivated. Then we have some mathematics here when we built the transition probability matrix. and with some mathematical tricks, we make that symmetric because initially the transition probability matrix is not symmetric. And what is the actual key here is that the M matrix, which the transition probability, its symmetric transformation, have the same eigenvalues. I will not say more. I will stop it here, and I'm just going to show you the picture that has more, it's more meaningful to describe. So what is a diffusion map? First of all, let's see what is a connectivity matrix. Okay, it's a 2D matrix. And this 2D matrix is representing inside the brain as a bunch of chaotic lines. Okay, each cell of the matrix represents the connection weight, let's say that, between the connection of two, let's say, nodes. The nodes here, as you can see, are parts, let's say, of the cortex. And one line is how much these two nodes are correlated. These two areas are correlating in terms of the Bolt signals, of course. Even, let's say, an experienced neuroscientist cannot tell so much from this chaotic image. The only thing that I can see here, for example, it's a very good connectivity between the two hemispheres on the prefrontal region. I can see on the parieto-occipital region, again, increased connectivity. I see very increased dense of connectivity on the temporal lobes, but rather than this, I cannot say too much. Okay. The other problem with this kind of figures is that scientists are not, let's say, so well trained to read them, and even if they are chaotic. Okay. Mostly, the scientific community have used to such kind of figures where we have, let's say, green, blue, and red areas. This, the right part, is actually the diffusion map of this connectivity matrix. And actually, this is a vector which has one value for every node that we see here. So the rendering gives us such a picture. However, there is a huge difference, and I'm telling that in order to not misunderstand and to interpret better the results. Usually in neuroscience, where we have such maps, the red areas denote, let's say, increased activity, and the blue areas denotes decreased activity or deactivated areas. In diffusion maps, this is not the case. Here, what we see is connectivity profiles. So let's say that the blue areas, for example, here, one node from this area and one node from this area, which have the same color, it means that they have also the same connectivity profile with the rest of the brain. So these two areas are connected to the rest of the brain with the same way. Or another interpretation is that the transition probability between two blue areas are very high. Okay, they are strongly correlated. However, if we take one node from, let's say, the blue area and one node from the red area, this means that these two nodes, they have completely different connectivity profile with the rest of the brain. They are not well connected, and actually the connectivity, let's say, is close to zero, and the transition probability is close to zero. So what we care mostly is the color and how close is one color to another in the Z spectrum, from blue to red. So in a similar, let's say, logic, we can say that a blue node has more, let's say, similar connectivity profile with a green node than it has with a red node. Okay, so it's something more, let's say, you can quantify it more. And as you can see now, we said that the diffusion maps is a dimensionality reduction technique because in the left, let's say, figure, we have a 2D matrix and we depicted a 2D matrix. While in the right figure, we had one D vector with the values of the diffusion, let's say, the diffusion weights on top of the cortex. So this is very helpful, especially not only for interpretation purposes, but also for implementation purposes, because when you have to do with 64,000 nodes, and imagine that this connectivity, the data actually was 64,000 by 64,000 by 468 participants. So you can imagine how huge data sets this, and as you can imagine, there are not, you cannot manipulate them so easily, process them, and make further analysis. Now, in this case, we reduce them, the data size by 64,000 because we cut out one dimension of the connectivity matrix. So it's much more easily to process them, to play with them, to let's say, visualize them and do our analysis. So what we actually did now is we take the diffusion map for each subject of the 468 and we formed, let's say, a matrix with each vector, its row to be one person's diffusion map. Then, since we had also the matrix of the personality questionnaires, we used partially square correlation in order to model the cross-block covariance. Partially square is a huge family that spans from, let's say, correlation to regression and path modeling. And it's mainly used in neuroscience and psychology, the correlation part, where we have the behavioral PLSC, where we try to analyze information which is common to the brain and behavior. This is what we did actually. The task PLSC, which have three other submodules, the seat PLSC and multi-table PLSC. I don't say too much about that. Then I will focus on this actually how it works. Imagine here that we have one matrix, the behavior, which in our case is the 60 items of personality for the first subject, and the diffusion map in the X matrix, which is 64,000 numbers for the first subject. Then what we do is actually we compute, since we form this matrix, we compute the product, excuse me, and we take actually the cross correlation between the brain and activity. Again, I won't say too much about this. Then we use singular value decomposition, and we take the U and the V matrix, and by projecting X and Y on the U and V, we take the latent variables. These latent variables are important. You can think about latent variables like the principal components of principal component analysis, which are some variables that try to concentrate the common patterns between behavior and brain, between personality and brain connectivity, for example. I will not say too much here about the relationships and so on. I will pass all this because I don't want to sleep. I don't want you to sleep because I like that too much. So recapping, actually what we had in terms of data and analysis was we have 468 matrices of 64K by 64K size. Then we applied diffusion map ending to 468 vectors now with 64K numbers, and actually the X matrix for PLSC was 468 by 64K, and the personality questionnaire, which was 468 by 60, which is the items of the new FFI. Then we used partially square correlation, where we find 60 latent variables, and after some permutation statistics, actually we did 1,000 permutation, we find the correlation with the latent variables and the most important and significant latent variables. And from the most significant, let's say, latent variables, we found using 1,000 bootstrap, the significant results that we are going to present it right now. So what we found mostly is that, and what I'm going to present right now, and actually this should be presented simultaneously, the behavior, the personality, and the brain. But in this slide, we see about the personality part of the questions. In the next slide, about the brain and some grouping of these questions. As you can see here, we have the questions that were significantly correlated with the first latent variable. The red ones are those that are positively correlated, and the blue ones that are negatively correlated. And as you can see, you will see that the red and the blue questions are somehow reversed. For example, at times I bully or flatter people into doing what I want them to. I really feel fearful. Yeah, for example, you see that it says, I cannot read this, it's too small. Let me see here. Or it says, sometimes I'm not as dependent or reliable as I should be. And on the other side, I often feel as I'm bursting with energy. For example, this is something completely different. Also, as you can see here, the first question says, at times I bully or flatter people into doing what I want them to. And the third question is, I'm pretty good about pacing myself so as to get things done on time. Okay. The fourth question is, if I don't like people, I let them know. So you understand, if you read these questions, that these questions start to profile a person that it's, let's say, I don't know what word to use, but to be more active, let's say that, and doing things as he or she wants to, how they should, how he or she thinks that things should be done. Now, let's focus on this slide where it's, let's say, the most, the slide that has the most information about the study. And what we see, I will describe you each one of the 5 sub-figures separately. Here we have the latent variables, and here we see it's the p-value actually of the latent variables. And here is the threshold of 0.05. So what we found actually is that the first 4 latent variables were statistically significant. And on the beta, let's say, sub-figure, we can see that in its bar, we see that how much of the cross-block covariance explained. So the first latent variable explained around 28% of the cross-block covariance, then 16 the second latent variable, 6 and 5 the other 2. So if we sum them up, we have around 70% of cross-block covariance. Now, on the C part, on the C figure, what we actually see is the areas of the brain that are significantly correlated. Positively are the red and negatively are the blue, with the first latent variable. And this latent variable was the one that is correlated with the previous questions we saw. Then this figure, the D figure, describes how many questions and what is the, let's say, the polarity of correlation, if it's positive or negative, are with the first latent variable. And we saw that from the previous questions, actually 8 belong to agreeableness, and they are positively correlated with agreeableness, with the first latent variable. 4 belong to conscientiousness, and they are again positively correlated with the first latent variable. Another 4 belong to neuroticism, and they are correlated negatively with the first latent variable. And then we have another 6, 2 and 1, 2 and 1 in openness and extraversion. So what I want here to focus mostly is that we observe the pattern of stability here. The stability meta trait is composed of the positive agreeableness, positive conscientiousness, and reversed neuroticism. So we see that from, at least from the part of self-reports, that this first latent variable have captured the meta trait of stability. But what about the brain? What's happening on the side of the brain? Does this follow this pattern? And in order to see that, what we do actually was that we masked the average, let's say, diffusion maps on the areas that are denoted by this figure, which actually the significantly correlated cortical areas. And what we saw here actually is that you see that those that are positively correlated with the latent variable are again on the same color. You see that? And those that are negatively correlated are with the same color. And not only this, we also saw that let's say, the red part belong to the Saliers network mainly, while the blue part belong to the default mode network. These two networks are antagonistic networks. We know from the theory that not only from, let's say, data-driven approach and so on, that these two are antagonistic, but we know very well that in pathologies like psychosis or coma or I don't remember now something else, we see that these two networks are not, let's say, so much correlated. So they are somehow mixed. That's why we have this pathology, let's say that, or this is the reason, or this is the cause. Okay. However, we know that these two networks in a healthy brain should be completely anticorrelated. Okay. And now, let's say the main and the overall conclusion from all this figure is this: that the stability meta trait is significantly correlated, let's say, positively correlated with the anticorrelation of these two networks. So if a person has increased stability, which means that has increased agreeableness, increased consciousness, and decreased neuroticism, this person will also have high anticorrelated salience and default mode network. Reversed, if a person has lower stability, which means higher neuroticism and lower agreeable consciousness, this person will have lower anticorrelation between the salience and the default mode network. Okay, and if you see a bit the literature that a lot of personality disorders or anxiety or emotional disorders like anxiety or panic attacks or let's say depression that are linked with high neuroticism mostly, you see that in these cases the default mode network and the salience network are not so well correlated. So now closing, because now it's the last 2 or 3 slides, I would like now to incorporate here the serotonin system. What we know about serotonin is that it is linked with decreased aggression, increased sociability, and decreased impulsivity. The decreased aggression is linked with, let's say, decreased neuroticism, so it's, let's say, negatively correlated with neuroticism. The increased sociability, it's also is linked with increased agreeableness. So the serotonin is linked with increased agreeableness, and the decreased impulsivity means that we are high cautiousness. So again, the serotonin is linked to is highly correlated with the consciousness. So again, as you can see here, the serotonin system is also follows the stability pattern, the stability meta trait pattern. Increased agreeableness and consciousness, or positively correlated with agreeableness and consciousness, and negatively correlated with aggression. Actually, this is how to say that this is captured by the partial least square model as the first latent variable we have that we described earlier. And this is our first latent variable. So, as I said before, there is an evidence about stability that is related to serotonin, and we show that in our results. But what is happening to the brain? This is, let's say, the receptor areas of the serotonin. You can see here that we speak about the temporal lobe, let's say the anterior cingulate cortex, some parts of the frontal cortex, and here, which is the temporofrontal cortex, let's say that, or temporocentral, let's say that. Okay, do you remember the maps, the diffusion maps that we saw in our analysis? You see here how well these are, let's say, correlated, all this part with this part, and so on, with the receptors. So I don't want to impose that there is, let's say, great correlation or high correlation between the serotonin with the serotonergic system with our results. But at least what we can say here that there is a clear evidence between the link of, first of all, personality, second, functional connectivity inside the brain, okay, and third, the serotonergic system. Who is the moderator here? We cannot say from this analysis, okay, because we everything we used was about correlation. So, and as you know, correlation cannot imply causation. However, this was the first step in my, at least in my studies, where I try to link, let's say, the personality with some biological characteristics that are related to the brain. Now, closing this presentation, I would like to discuss a bit more about what is missing from the current analysis. What actually we didn't do so far was we saw the meta trait of, let's say, stability, but we haven't seen so much about what's happening on the traits itself, on the neuroticism, extraversion, agreeableness, concessionist, and openness. And then what's happening in the facets, in the two faces of the same, let's say, on the two borders, the two edges of the spectrum of the traits. And let me tell you something, this is not so easy. And the difficult part on this is that we need huge sample sizes because, you know, when the individual differences actually in the normal population are small, the smallest, let's say, the difference between your samples is the higher the sample you need in order to increase the probabilities of finding people with different personality profiles, so as to check also the theories and the assumptions you have and the research questions you have in regards to the connectivity and the variability of connectivity between different, let's say, between people with different personality profiles. I will close here. Thank you very much. I don't know if we are going to have questions right now. I will stop share.
Thank you so much, Manousos. It was really interesting what you presented as a link between the personality, neurobiology, neurotransmitter systems, and the connectivity maps. And this makes it as a really logical story, at least to my understanding. Unfortunately, I cannot follow all the mathematics behind all the analysis, but the conclusions that you made, I think, were very, very clear.
I cannot follow very well the theories behind that.
Yes, that's why the teamwork is the best in these studies.
Exactly, and what I would like to say to our audience, because I believe that they are mostly, let's say, students, and what I say to my students is that hopefully or not hopefully, nowadays the research and the science, in order to solve real-world problems, become too much complicated. We need a collaboration between various disciplines in order to solve problems and move forward humanity. And we need the most difficult part on this, let's say, collaboration between the multiple disciplines is to start speaking the same language. It's the first step towards this.
Yeah, and when you say that, actually, I think in neuroscience, this is it's a field in which this kind of conversation on the same language is happening, because many specialists coming from psychology, from medical background, and from technical, being biomedical engineering or mathematical background, are trying to work together. So in a way, our program that we proposed, the master program in neuropsychology, is also trying to bridge these different
Exactly.
languages.
And I'm happy to be the, let's say, the module leader about teaching modules more practical, like MATLAB, applied neuroscience, EEG signal processing, and so on.
Oh yeah. This definitely is something that we are all eager to have.
Yeah. Nice.
I think we don't have the opportunity to take questions from the audience, as far as I understand.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we cannot have a real discussion, but I suppose people who are interested can reach us, and I suppose these results are partially or maybe entirely published already.
Not yet, because no, you know what's happening? I want to cross-validate them, and we face computational problems because the data sets are huge, and we have various crashes and so on. I don't want to publish that yet, let's say, as it is, because I need to cross-validate them.
Of course, yeah. So this is really fresh data and something preliminary. So it's great that you share that with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. So maybe now we can give the floor to Professor Dikaios to say some words about City College, York University, and the programs that we're proposing.
Thank you, Ivo. Thank you, Manousos. It is a great honor to be among you, both great professors. I am not a professor myself, just to clarify. I am the Director of International Student Recruitment. And I'm glad to be with you and follow this interesting topic, although I must admit that at some point I lost connection with all these mathematical, values. And I realize how much psychology has grown. My daughter is a psychologist, and I appreciate psychology as a discipline very, very much. So let me share very quickly with you. I'm not going to take much, very few minutes. And I'm sharing. Ivo, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm sharing now. All right.
And your presentation is also visible at the moment.
Okay, full screen.
Full screen, yes.
Okay. Now, let me say a couple of things about us so our listeners and viewers will realize that we are talking about a great university, University of York. Now, very quickly, I know I speak to educated people, so very quickly, some points when you consider choosing your master's studies. Definitely take into consideration job availability and personal interests, then the reputation of the university, which is directly connected to the quality of a program, because it enhances your career opportunities. These three factors always go together. I always say to people, if you decide to go for master's studies, No matter what you have studied before or where you have studied before, the idea is that you choose a top university, because the reality is a degree from a top university will be your professional passport for the rest of your career. Also, we need to consider the tuition fees, if there are any scholarships, any reduced fees, the living expenses and the traveling expenses if we decide to move from where we are to go, for instance, to another country, the student learning experience and the networking opportunities. Only then will you be able to make the right choice for you. And I mean directly for you. Now, since we are talking about University of York, let's see some statistics. These are the UK rankings. There are about 180 universities in the United Kingdom, universities and higher institutions. University of York ranks among the top universities. It is an elite university. And I'm quoting here the latest publications, the latest rankings. So you can see University of York ranks among the best. Actually, it is a member of the Russell Group. What is the Russell Group? A team of experts that set extremely high standards for British universities. Only 24 universities belong in this Russell Group, and York is number 1 for learning opportunities, number 2 for teaching, 6 anniversary prizes by the late Queen Elizabeth. And in regards to excellence, and for me this is a very strong statistical factor, in the Research Excellence Framework, which is published every 5 years, the University of York was ranked number 10 for the impact of research. Now, University of York is a British university with a campus in the United Kingdom, but with an European campus in Thessaloniki, Greece. And it is not just a cooperation, it is, I would say, a coalition between University of York and Europe Campus City College. It is the European campus of this top British university. The main campus is in Greece, but we have satellite activities in 8 countries. One of them is Bulgaria. We're part of the University of York academic community, international by nature, because we have students, academic staff from 60 different countries. All the programs are approved by the University of York, and degrees are awarded directly by the University of York. And now it brings me to Sofia. We're proud to offer master's programs in psychology in Sofia. This is a collaboration between City College, University of York Europe Campus, and New Bulgarian University, which I'm sure those of you from the region of New Bulgarian University very well for high reputation. So we are offering 2 master's programs in psychology in Sofia. The MA in clinical neuropsychology. This lasts 3 years. Classes are held 2 weekends per month. And 1 weekend is taught by City College staff, and 1 weekend is taught by New Bulgarian University staff. In order to enter this program, you need to have a bachelor's degree in psychology or any other health-related or biomedical discipline. And we also offer the MSc in cognitive neuropsychology. Basically, the 2 programs, the MA in clinical neuropsychology and the MSc in cognitive neuropsychology, is the same program. The MA in clinical neuropsychology ends with practical application, practice, whereas the MSc is completed with a dissertation, a thesis. So it lasts 2 years, again, the same program. And this is open not just in psychology, but I think we can accept others as well. Now, the programs, as I mentioned before, they last 2 or 3 years with a practicum. Everything is in English. We teach through lectures, academic assignments, and research. And when you graduate, you get 2 degrees, the master's degree of the University of York and a master's degree from New Bulgarian University. We have an office in Sofia, Miss Desi Pencheva. You can contact New Bulgarian University as well directly and ask for the representative of University of York Europe campus. So you can find more information locally. And just 2-3 pictures, just as we say, you know, to make us dream a bit. This is a graduation ceremony, a graduating group, a lot of Bulgarian and other Balkan students among the students, and the graduation hall where we have the graduation ceremony. Dream for yourself, and we hope we will have you on our program. Thank you for that, and back to Ivo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dikaios. You made a great presentation. What I especially liked was the part towards choosing the best program for everybody. This is not always the same program that can suit every student, so everyone has to consider many things, and you listed the most important aspects that we have to think about. So definitely the University of York is a great opportunity, and I'm happy that at NBU we can benefit from the collaboration with the University of York Europe campus and with the City College, basically. So maybe just one small clarification: the two master's programs that we provide, actually both of them are 2 years. So the only difference, as you mentioned, is that the clinically oriented one is finalized with a practicum, which is a specific internship that the students have to follow and then to defend what they have done during this internship. While in the cognitive neuropsychology, they have to do their own research and analyze data and present it. So they have to make a dissertation, but both of the programs follow this 2 years scheme. So those of you who are interested, please contact Ms. Desi Pencheva, or you can contact NBU. Even you can contact me directly as the academic advisor for this program from the NBU side. I'll be more than happy to tell you more. So I think maybe we can finish at this moment. If you gentlemen would like to say something more, or
just a big thank you for the kind, you know, hospitality.
Yes, thank you also.
Thank you all for agreeing to participate and to speak. Thank you also to the technical staff of City College who organized that webinar, and thanks to all the people who listened to us live and those that would listen it later. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you
bye-bye
also.
to
Have a nice
everybody.
afternoon.